Cutting down trees and allowing them to crash to the ground is standard practice for lumberjacks. However, when logger Charlie Lawson cut into one particular tree, he uncovered something remarkable that compelled him to keep digging. Soon, he was sifting through the wooden remnants as if he were a child unwrapping birthday gifts. But what exactly was he searching for? For 43-year-old Charlie Lawson, being a lumberjack wasn't the most exciting job, and it wasn't his dream career. Still, he was thankful for it. The job paid the bills, and he enjoyed working with his great team. It was never boring, as he and his fellow loggers often found interesting things in the forest. Charlie couldn't picture himself in a 9-to-5 office job, stuck in front of a computer. He loved being outdoors, breathing fresh air, and working with his hands. Charlie knew his job had its dangers, but that was part of the excitement. However, he had no idea how dangerous it could really be. On a chilly Wednesday morning in November, the day started like any other, but soon turned into something Charlie had never experienced before. The air was filled with the smell of fresh pine and gasoline from the chainsaws. Charlie wore ear protection, but he could still hear the machines buzzing like a swarm of bees. Little did he know, he was just a few trees away from an amazing discovery. Sawdust was flying everywhere from the chainsaws. It was even sticking to Charlie's forehead, which was now drenched with sweat. It had been a long day, and Charlie was tired, so he turned off the saw to take a quick break and grab some water. That's when he saw a tree that didn't look like all the others. Something about it was ominous. Its bark was darker than the trees surrounding it, and it was taller. The tree towered over him, and then Charlie noticed something even more unusual. The tree was covered in strange bumps on its surface. The bumps protruded from the tree bark in an odd pattern, and they were covered with moss. In all of his 10 years on the job, Charlie had never come across anything quite like this before. He took another look at the nearby trees to see if they had a deformity like this one, but this tree was the only one like it. Charlie's first thought was that the lumps were bark cankers, which are dead sections of bark on branches or the main trunk of trees. It's a disease that affects many trees, but the infections didn't impact Charlie's work. Bark cankers were only important for farmers or people who could be at risk of having a rotten trunk fall on their home or car. So he took a closer look. Charlie hadn't seen lumps like this before. Upon a second look, the lumps couldn't be bark cankers, so he put his gear back on and went back to work. Charlie had no expectations, but he knew the tree was hiding something very interesting. And the tree wasn't just hiding something interesting, it was hiding something completely unexpected, something beyond anything Charlie could have ever imagined. The chainsaw easily tore into the huge tree, much smoother than Charlie expected, and before long, he was yelling timber at the top of his lungs. Gravity took over, and the tree made a high-pitched crack. Charlie could feel the vibration under his feet as the tree hit the ground, making a very loud thud. This had to have been the most dangerous cut he had ever made. With the tree hitting the ground, it seemed like the whole forest felt its impact. Even Charlie's team stopped what they were doing to see what was going on. Once Charlie finally regained his composure, he focused his attention on the freshly cut trunk. Within just a few seconds, Charlie saw that this tree was anything but normal. There was something unusual about it. The center of the trunk had a large gash running through it, and the tree had formed a protective layer around the gash. Luckily for Charlie, the rings were still clear, so he could figure out just how old the tree actually was. The tree had to be at least 30 to 35 years old. But just as Charlie was about to move on from the discovery, he saw something shiny that caught his attention out of the corner of his eye. Charlie saw something silver embedded at the end of the trunk's gash. That's when Charlie's heart started beating a mile a minute. He couldn't tell if he was excited or nervous. It was all too much for him. Charlie couldn't believe what was happening, and without even thinking, he pulled out his knife and removed the shining object. It was a lump of metal. Charlie's chainsaw had just missed it by a matter of inches, almost cutting it in half. Now that the object was released, Charlie was desperate to figure out what it was, so he studied it closely under the sunlight before deciding to let his team in on his discovery. He then called them over so they could take a better look. Charlie's team started to make their way over, and as they approached, he took yet another look at the tree trunk and discovered there was so much more hidden inside. He took out his knife again, eager to remove more objects. Charlie pried out another 3 metal lumps. He held the objects in his hands, turning them, and then held them up to the sky, watching as they glistened and caught the sun's reflection. But he still had no idea what the metal lumps could be. "Anyone know what this is?" he asked his fellow lumberjacks. Charlie tried not to get too excited, but he couldn't help but think that he had stumbled across hidden treasure. One member of his team picked up the lumps and started turning them around just as Charlie had, but they seemed just as confused as he was. Then one of the older members of the team joined them, and he knew exactly what it was. The older worker bent down to take a closer look at the mysterious lumps and started to laugh. Everyone was staring at him, waiting for him to reveal what they were. "Someone was bored," he said while grinning. "Bored? What was happening? How could 30-year-old metal have anything to do with being bored? Feel like cluing in the rest of us?" Charlie couldn't help but ask, "What's going on?" The older man replied while tugging at his beard, "Some guys come out here to hunt, and if they don't catch anything, they get bored and shoot at trees." The rest of the team smiled, just like the older man. Charlie had found some old bullet casings. While it wasn't the treasure he had hoped for, he knew there might be more hidden in the tree, and he wasn't ready to give up. Even though Charlie tried not to get too excited, he felt a bit let down by the discovery. Still, he was determined to find out if the old bullets were all the tree was hiding, so he grabbed his chainsaw and kept looking. It was a good thing he did because he was about to find something special. Charlie carefully cut away the wood layer by layer. In total, he found 8 bullets stuck deep inside the tree. Someone must have been really bored or frustrated. When Charlie finally reached the bottom of the trunk, he uncovered the real treasure that had been hidden for over 30 years, just waiting to be found. The tree stump was almost touching the ground. Charlie gathered all the bullets into a pile. They didn't belong in the forest, and whether they were worth anything or not, he planned to take them out. Charlie didn't like having anything but nature in the woods, but then he found something that changed his mind. Just as Charlie was about to cut the stump clean off, he saw something stuck in the corner of it. It was sparkling against the sun, just like the bullets had. He found more metal. At first, Charlie assumed it was just another bullet. He moved the shrubs aside and reached for the metal, which was covered in dirt. But when he touched it, it felt much bigger than the bullets he had found. It wasn't a bullet after all. Still thinking he had stumbled upon another bullet, Charlie wiped the dirt off the metal. He didn't have a clean rag handy, so he used the next best thing, the end of his shirt. It wasn't until he saw the intricate carvings on the metal object that he knew what he was holding. He couldn't believe what he discovered. What was something as interesting as this doing in the forest? This was way more valuable than old bullets. The metal casting around the object revealed to Charlie that it wasn't just anything he had discovered. It had to be worth something. As if that wasn't cool enough, the inside needle of the object was still working. It was as if no time had passed. It had to be survival or hunting equipment. Do you have any idea what Charlie found? If you guessed a compass, you'd be right. Charlie found a compass, and it wasn't just any compass. It was one of the most well-crafted compasses he had ever come across. He couldn't believe that the compass had been lodged in the roots. A hunter had most likely dropped it during one of their outings, and after all the years that passed, the snow and rain must have buried it next to the tree. Charlie smiled, realizing how old and valuable the compass might be. While he knew it was ancient, he had no idea of its exact age or who it belonged to. He searched every corner for a name or date but found nothing. Not wanting to draw attention, he slipped the compass into his jacket pocket while his team worked. However, he couldn't stop thinking about it. After work, he decided to take it to an antique expert for evaluation. As the expert looked over the compass with a magnifying glass, Charlie waited anxiously. He wrote down something every few moments in his notebook. When the expert finished, he looked up at Charlie and smiled. He revealed to him that the compass was over 100 years old. Because it was such a unique piece, it was worth around $200. Charlie couldn't believe his luck. He decided to hold on to the piece and keep it as a reminder of that special day. Charlie expected to have a typical day at work, but everything changed when he encountered a tree that stood out from the rest. Despite encountering several challenges, the determined lumberjack refused to back down. His persistence ultimately led him to a remarkable discovery, a valuable antique. We wish Charlie many more treasure-filled adventures in the future.